The opinions expressed are those of the host and guests of this program and are not necessarily those of station staff, management, or sponsors. WPSL does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WPSL. It's time to Ask a Rabbi. Call in with your questions and comments at 340-1590. And now, here's your host, Rabbi Shafir Lobb.
Hello, everyone. This is Rabbi Shafir Lobb of Congregation Eitz Chayim for Ask a Rabbi this beautiful Friday morning. And it is just under 2 weeks to Purim. And I talked a little bit about Purim before, but I'm going to talk some more about it because I was kind of amused at a comment that somebody put out on one of the rabbi listservs of all crazy places. And what the question was they were looking to make some kind of lecture or educational series based on the book of Esther, so that you should be able to use the wonderful qualities in the book of Esther. And one of the others on the group commented, "The book is so bad and the characters are so bad, the plot is so nasty, just have fun." And that's quite true. The other thing that made me think of was a number of months back, somebody said to me, "Well, isn't Esther the prototype of what a bride should be?" And I'm like, no. Not in very many ways. What?
No, it just went very loud.
Okay, sorry about that. And Stuart is here with me today as well, folks. Yay, Stuart. So we're going to be talking about Esther some more. And the book of Esther in my little scriptures. Hello?
You're on, don't worry.
Okay. It's 10 chapters, not very long. It goes, in my book, from 1785 to to 1801. And we're playing musical mics around here. So, yeah, that just got a little bit louder. That's okay. It's weird today. Yeah, the gremlins are out. Okay, so
I've turned you completely off, and you still can hear.
Okay.
So we've got a short or something.
I'll live with it.
Because over here you had nothing. Over here you're too loud. Sorry, Rabbi.
That's okay.
Where's the just right?
So
I don't know. I'll move you over another one.
So Little Red Riding Hood.
Oh gosh, no. Very good.
There we go. So he's now good, and I'm fine, and we're in good shape. Esther. One of the last books of scriptures. It's the Hebrew is a little bit different, and the melody is quite interesting. And it leads to the festival of Purim. The name Purim comes from the lots that they cast. The bad guys in the story, Haman and his cronies, cast lots, and to pick the day for the royal edict that they get the king to issue, that all of the Jews should be destroyed and are not allowed to defend themselves against this nastiness. And that's kind of what Esther objects to eventually. She does not do it on her own initially. In fact, her first reaction is like, "Hey, I'm just the queen. I'm I'm just his bedmate. Don't ask me to do anything." And Mordecai gets a little bit nasty with her. And then she says, "Okay, well, let me fast for 3 days and think about what to do, and you have everybody fast too, and we'll see."
I have to ask, how does the fast help? What is the fast?
Well,
what does that do?
We would assume it's a day of 3 days of prayer.
Okay.
And probably meditating and thinking and pondering. One of the things that's worth noting is that God's not mentioned anywhere in the book of Esther. Nowhere is God's name mentioned, which is kind of interesting. There's only
a godless story.
A godless story. Esther, it's hidden. Asater, I will hide it. Or I will save. A soter. Soters are saviors. So there's a couple of meanings inside there. Soterism, if you want to Google it, I will tell you a little bit about it. But Esther's an interesting character. You know, there isn't much really to commend the story except that it's so weird. That's its biggest point, and I think that's exactly it. Kind of like the Hoyoka in for American Indians, right? Who's so absurd that it causes you to think about what's going on, what the ritual means, and what's important. Or a Zen master does the same kind of things. Those kind of weird things that make you look at life a little differently. And Esther is that kind of a story, that kind of a book. Right. You know, Vashti resists the king and she gets banished. And the text is not clear what it is that she doesn't do other than not come wearing her crown. It doesn't say only her crown. But she's banished. And you can decide if that's more serious than banishing or just really banishing. It's one of the joys of the text. And the king then searches for all of the unmarried young ladies in the empire, 127 provinces, from Ethiopia to Persia. So it's a good chunk of land that he's the king of, and Esther is rounded up in that bunch, and the women are given a year to get ready for their one night with the king. So they spend 6 months with perfumes and makeup and 6 months basically learning how to pleasure the king. And, you know, there's a telling little piece in that Esther takes with her only those things that the person in charge of the women tells her to take. And there's one of the things that people might not pick up in the book real easily. There's 4 genders in the book of Esther. It's not just guys and gals. There's people who used to be, who were born female and are identifying as male, and there's people who were born male identifying as female in the story. But that one's not always picked up. Yeah, they're in there too. Right. The men who wear saris and the...
But we don't have the why.
No, we don't know why they're... You know, it's just that they have a lot to do with taking care of the king and taking care of the palace and taking care of the women. And, you know, maybe it's because they know both sides. I don't know. Some interesting questions there. But they definitely show up. And a lot of people don't pick that up. Yeah, I can't help that. There's lots in this book. It's only 10 chapters in the last chapters.
Are they inoperable, like in the Mel Brooks story?
Some of them, yes. Well, certainly the ones who were born men, who and there still is in that part of the world, people who do full castration as a way of changing gender. So, right, it's.
But now today in that part of the world, it's not allowed, correct? I mean,
no, they're
you're
still
cast
there.
out, or you're.
You know, in a lot of cultures, very often they have special functions, and they do in the Book of Esther as well, right? They're keepers of the women and things like that, because perhaps because they can teach them things that others might not be able to teach, or because they can't do anything with the women, whichever it is. It's made probably as a combination of both. But in any event, the women spend this inordinate amount of time preparing for their night with the king. So it's the Scheherazade story in a lot of ways. And, you know, there's all kinds of things to let you know that this is really crazy. So, okay, so you yelled over a certain name that begins, was it Harry? A certain name, right? And the reason for that, do you know the reason for that, Stuart? Why we
boo him?
Why we boo him?
He wanted to kill all the Jews.
And that's not enough. There's lots of people who've wanted to kill all the Jews. It's because he's an Agagite.
He's made of rocks?
No. He's from that tribe that Saul was told to obliterate.
Okay, that deep I don't know.
Yeah, that's the reason. And that's also why Mordecai won't bow to him. It's not because Jews don't bow, because obviously Mordecai's bowing to the king, or the king would be mad. But he won't bow to Haman because Haman's an Agagite. And he even says that to him. I'm a Hebrew and you're an Agagite, and we've had this problem for hundreds of years. Real valid thing. But that's why the name is obliterated, because you shall blot out the name. That instruction that's in Torah. And so Haman, being a descendant of it, gets his name, and that's why his sons get the same treatment, because they're all from that tribe. Those are subtle pieces that people don't necessarily pick up. Here's a little bit of trivia. It's the first time that somebody is referred to as Yehudi, that's used for Jewish, and that's Mordecai. He's a Judahite. And the book itself in Jewish scriptures is right after Ecclesiastes, which is famous for a time for this and a time for that. People know that book for that. And the book after Esther is Daniel, and that closes scripture, except for a couple of little things like Ezra, Chronicles, and those guys. Ezra, Nehemiah, and Chronicles. So it's very close to the end of the book. So for me, Esther starts on 1785. This is a huge book of scriptures. And all of scriptures ends on page 2023.
So it's really near the end.
It really is near the end. It's less than a quarter of an inch of very thin paper. So it's close to the end. It's close to the end in literary style, and it's called one of the Megillot, one of the writings. So Jews don't consider it to be prophecy. They don't consider it. It's sacred because it's part of scriptures, but it's a different. It's a different purpose and a different reason. And so it's full of turnabouts and all kinds of things. There's a reason why Esther, Easter, and things like that happen around the same time. Kind of a cabin fever, spring fever kind of thing, an upside down. And probably Mardi Gras has some connections way back if we really looked.
Speaking of upside down.
Speaking of upside down, exactly, right? Things that are turned about and crazy. And, right, so one of the instructions for Purim is that you're supposed to get so merry that you can't tell a blessing from a curse.
Again, Mardi Gras, getting very merry.
Getting very merry, yeah. And you can use the substance of your choice to do that.
So in other words, that's commanded.
No, that's tradition. It's not commanded. The getting merry's not in the book.
I can't use that for the exercise of my First Amendment rights?
No.
Okay.
No. Sorry about that. But there's a couple of really funny themes that run through the book. One of which is whatever is issued as a law is a law, and it can never be changed. Right? The king can't change his mind and change the law that he issued. That's the whole problem.
Is that so that you're careful doling out laws? Because you're going to have to live by them forever.
A long time. Yeah, forever. That's probably true, that was a reason for it, but it's interesting, right? Because he's not an absolute king if he can't change the rules. Right, so he's a limited monarchy. And that's why they've got to
Who would stop him?
Probably his wise men.
What would they do?
One does not know. But in any event, it's a line that the king says over and over again. Once it's been issued, it's issued, and I can't undo it. And right, so what happens is basically he gives permission for the Jews to launch a preemptive strike, if you will. And they basically wipe out all their enemies. And it says everybody was afraid of them after that. I can't imagine why. So it's clearly an insane story because, neither, in no way does ethnic cleansing ever work. not one way and not the other. Neither side is ever totally obliterated. And there's always the devil to pay at the end, because it doesn't work. It's just not a good idea.
And you don't want to talk about the adult story of Esther.
There's a very adult story in Esther. You can use your imagination and figure out what the golden scepter is that gets extended and what Esther is wearing when she goes to talk to the king. She invites the king and Haman to a drinking party.
Boo.
Right. It's a drinking party. And at the first drinking party, when the king says, okay, what do you really want? And she says, I want you to come to a party again tomorrow. So they do it a second time. And then that time when he's merry, she reveals that Haman is out to kill her. Right. And Haman has no idea that she's Jewish. Right. That she's part of this group that he's and it's an interesting, if you look at it, it's a very interesting little sub part in the story. What Haman has done is given money to the king in order to annihilate the Jews and take their stuff. Right? So it's an investment for Haman. He's given the king some amount of money and then said, well, these people don't really listen to the laws anyway. They're not doing you any good. Let me get rid of them, and I'll take the profit as my cost for getting rid of these problems for you. And the king's sodded, because he's always sodded. He goes from drinking party to drinking party. The story opens with a very long time of being drunk. It's a year party and then 7 days. Because, and the thing about that, can you imagine what would happen in a government that was shut down for a year while the king had a party?
I heard they were working drunks.
I know what happened to a government that shut down for a month.
Yeah, so just imagine what it would have been like, right, for the length of time.
But we have to also keep in mind that this is an area that's much smaller than, let's say, our country. This is, or the whole.
It's 127 provinces. It goes all the way down.
But there were
Africa.
a lot less people in the world back then.
Yeah.
Population-wise.
No argument about that, but still. That's still a pretty good chunk of land, especially for those days, especially for what they had to have, the way that administration had to have happened in those days. Right. And everything is, every time he issues a decree, it's got to be translated into all 127 languages. That's another ongoing theme in here. Everything's got to be in all the different languages.
But does word make it to all of the people ever?
That's a good question. He sends out the messengers over and over and over. Right. So yeah. So I'm sorry, it's a half a year rather. 180 days. Right. It's 180 days for all of the nobles and the governors of the provinces to have this party with the king. Basically so he can show off how fancy everything is. It's a banquet. An ongoing banquet. A 6-month banquet.
Well, people had to keep coming with
stuff.
Supplies.
Yeah.
People. So.
And nobody's
how would you
out
supply a party like that?
Right. And nobody's doing anything to take care of the kingdom during that period.
Okay.
Right? Because everybody's at the party.
Mm-hmm.
And who's gonna want to miss the party to go out to work? And then there's a 7-day party for everybody who lives in Shushan, which is the capital. And at the same time, Vashti's having a banquet for the women over at her place. And that's where the scene starts. And that's where, from there, he says, bring her wearing her royal crown so that everybody can see how beautiful she is. And I can kind of understand why somebody wouldn't want to come to a party where everybody's totally sodded. I don't know that I'd trust my guards to be able to keep me safe doing that. And so she says no. Right? And somebody, Memucan, and some people say that's Haman in another name. Again, you can decide if that is or not. But he's the one who says, issue a decree that every man should have authority in his home and be able to speak his own language. So, that's an interesting piece, right? Issues a decree that everybody can speak their own language. Why would that even have to have been an edict back then? Right? And the fear is that if they don't issue that decree and the word of the queen not listening to to her husband gets out, then women just will not obey their husbands. Terrible, terrible, terrible.
But I bet they weren't anyway. I mean, they were kind of, but not really. Yeah. On the surface, it looked like they were.
Yeah.
But they were probably really doing their own thing.
If even on the surface. Right, if even on the surface. And, and when you get, so here's, right. And here's the piece, right. In the fortress, Shushan lived a Jew by the name of Mordechai, the son of Yair, the son of Shimei, a Benjamite, right, which means he's related to Saul, King Saul. Kish had been exiled from Jerusalem in the group that was carried into exile. Had been driven into exile by Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. Excuse me. He was the foster father to Hadassah, who is Esther. Now that's another piece, Hadassah. I love it. Hadassah is the Hebrew word for myrtle. Do you know what myrtle's the symbol of?
Something fragrant?
Something sexy.
Okay, that's good enough too.
Right? The myrtle of Venus.
Okay, I'm not going there.
Uh-huh. Well, right, that's the original words to the national anthem, to the Star-Spangled Banner. Has a line in it, I shall teach you to entwine the myrtle of Venus with Bacchus's vine.
That was in the Star-Spangled Banner.
That was in the melody of the Star-Spangled Banner. That's when they, people are wonderful. When the Star-Spangled Banner was put to music, it was put to a bawdy bar song because everybody knew the melody. And it worked to the words. So, but those are the original words. There's a couple of groups around the country that sing that. You can Google it. You can see the original.
I will.
I'm sure you will. There's a line in it, like I said, that says, I will teach you. Young man, I will teach you how to entwine. So you can wonder, why does Esther have hidden Savior Myrtle as her name? It's kind of an interesting combination of names. And the story has just got all of that kind of depth to it. So, is it a real serious book? Yes and no. I think it's serious because you're invited to look at the depth and see the subtleties and the innuendo in there. Right.
Try to find it.
Try to find it, right. So, and you've got things like Haman builds a gallows in his backyard when he gets mad at Mordechai. He wants to hang him on it. And the gallows is 75 feet high. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think I'm going to put something up in my backyard that's 75 feet high. You were talking about code enforcement. I think
right.
they'd come around and have some words for me. But how are you going to get...
Is it an exaggeration to make a point?
It's real clear on that measurement. So I think it's a way of telling you this is a story. Right. It was so high. It was taller than any building in Shushan. Right. 75 feet is like 7 stories. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of foot. Or a lot of cubits. And what's a cubit, right? Star-Spangled Banner, right? There you go. It was once a song of drinking and sex. He Googled it. See, you didn't believe me.
I believed you.
Uh-huh.
It was just an interesting thing to...
Yeah. That's so, here's all kinds of...
I want to find the original words.
You'll enjoy them. They sing well. If you ever go to Old Williamsburg in Virginia, there they sing it in the inns. When they have the bards come through singing. And that's the way people used to advertise things. Like there's a wonderful song that I remember from Williamsburg called Nottingham Ale. And basically what they would do is they would hire bards to go from bar to bar to bar and teach the jingles.
Even that's what it is, because anything that you sing, you learn for whatever reason quickly.
Yeah.
And where should you hide an advertisement? In a song,
right? Yeah. And so the song Nottingham Ale speaks to the wonderful qualities of Nottingham Ale. And I'm sure that sales went up once that song got, merchants are quick to learn those things. And so it's a fun time. So Purim is this crazy mixed up holiday, and there's a really great piece. You're talking about the adult side of it, and I know I've shown it because I've shown it in the shul, in the temple. There's what, the Jews are coming, or Here Come the Jews. It's one or the other. I forget the name of the show. It's an Israeli show, and they do a spoof on Esther, and her uncle Mordechai is saying to her, "I've got this idea. Why don't you go to the king and have fun, and then he'll like what you do, and we'll get off, and we won't have this problem." And Esther looks at him and says, "So you want me to be a whore?" And he says, No, not exactly a whore. He says, "Yeah, a whore." And they have this, and then he says to her, "Oh, it'll be great. There'll be a holiday name for you, and people will dress up, and and she says, "They're going to dress up like a whore?" He says, "Well, high school, high school and older, is the end line of the routine." And it is very, very funny. If you Google that one, you'll find it on YouTube, and they've got translation, or subtitles, I guess. Yeah, subtitles. So you'll get it. It's hysterically funny, both in the subtitle and in the Hebrew. So yeah, it's a fun holiday. When I was in Israel, they had little air hammers that they used to hit things. Hit cars, hit you on the head. They don't hurt. They're just puffy things.
Like squeaky toys?
Yeah, like a
thing?
squeaky toy. Yeah, you just boink, 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 boink.
I can't even read the words of this song.
Okay, then please don't.
The English words don't make any sense to me.
Oh, okay.
Harmony Fent a petition.
You just have to, it's a little bit older English. You'll figure it out. You're clever. What can I say? So that's the joy of it. And so that's how Purim comes to be. And there's the food for Purim are homentashen, which are little moon cookies. They're and people, I posted on my Facebook wall, somebody did them in cannoli. So people are getting more extravagant, and I know he likes the chocolate ones that I've made.
Amen.
Yeah, same. Yeah, traditionally they're made with
like chocolate there, huh, Stuart? Because
yeah.
That's twice today.
Twice with chocolate.
We talked about
'cause
chocolate.
he talked about chocolate in his office. Yeah, I heard that. Traditionally, homentashen were made out of mon, out of poppy seed, and prune butter is also used. Probably because they're dark, and so they make the cookie more obvious. But nowadays you'll find anything inside there. You'll find apricot, strawberry, all different kinds of flavors, custard, chocolate.
Can you tell me, I have this weird fear in my
A weird fear, uh-oh.
Can you tell me what the hamantashen is supposed to look like?
A triangle.
What is the image supposed to reflect?
It's
A
a
hat.
triangle. Well, it's either a hat, an
After
ear,
your show
or
last
a
week,
pocket.
I Googled.
He Googled it.
I
yeah.
did Google.
I know what it looks like, but is it supposed to be reflective of something else?
Yeah, a part of anatomy.
That's what I thought.
I didn't find that in my Googling.
Just look at the cookie.
Okay. Oh, my goodness.
Just look at it.
Am I blushing?
Okay, you can see. See, he can see it in his mind's eye, and he knows exactly what I'm talking about because it's painfully obvious.
Yeah, I tried to see if I could tie the
Definitely
two,
not-
the
definitely not chocolate.
kolachki with the cookie, and their kolachkis are technically round, so they're a little different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're a little bit, but I think it comes from Montaschen, a poppy seed pocket. Right, it's a popular food in Europe, and so a lot of foods changed with or I should say, the Jews who were living in Europe transitioned a lot of celebratory foods into foods that were available and popular. And yes, I know, folks, that I put my hand in front of my face. I saw it, so I'm going to put my hands down, and so there's that kind of a blending. I'm not aware of a different kind of food for Purim for the Sephardi. Now, there is for Hanukkah. Hanukkah has very different foods depending on where in the world Jews are. And it might well be that Purim, not as significant, may not even have had a food associated with it, but it did in Europe. And that's the Hamantaschen. And, right. And Montaschen, somebody probably noticed that, Mon and Hamon, the Montaschen, sounded an awful lot like Haman pockets, which is one of the meanings. And in Israel they become ears. Here they're called hats. It's because everybody's dancing around the triangle cookie. Nobody wants to own up to the cookie itself. Although I will tell you that the teenagers in my congregation in Tucson figured it out very, very quickly.
None of them in the current congregation have.
That may be, and I'm not going to point it out to them, so they'll have to figure it out on their own.
Yeah, the other thing I found out Googling was baskets or gift baskets or gifts.
That is the requirement for the holiday, is to give a portion to other people. And it's not, some people say, well, it's to the poor. It's not. It's to everybody. Everybody's to be given a meal. Right, it's a sharing of portions, and so it needs. The cookies often end up in it because they're dessert for the meal, but you've got to have a beverage in there.
So you're having them anyway, right?
You're going to eat them, yes.
So you make enough to give.
Every Jewish holiday is just so much food.
Mm-hmm.
I should be eating huge, 3 times his size.
Yeah, I was trying to figure how the story got to the cookie, but never mind.
Yeah, it's the party. Right. So, and my one of my favorite lines out of it still is one of the Purim plays where we had a fun golden scepter. It was a broom pole or a mop pole, and somebody had glued on top of it the ball from a toilet.
Okay.
Right, the float ball.
Yeah. As
the top of the scepter. And so the king is holding it, and Esther walks in, and we had reversed the roles. We had a woman playing the king and a guy being Esther that was in that particular skit that day. And so as Esther traipses in front of the king extends the gold scepter, and she looks at me and she says, "I get this now." And Esther touches it, right?
In 2014, a class teacher objected to Hamantaschen cookies based upon what they looked like.
I'm not surprised.
It's a cookie.
It's a cookie. It's a triangular
it was brought
cookie.
It was brought to a second grade class.
Yeah, well, some people are more visually graphic than others. What can I say? Yeah, the story is all about drinking and sex. It just is. It's all about parties, and they're not just parties. They're drinking parties. It's the Hebrew word for a drinking party.
But the process saved the Jews.
Oh, in that story, yeah. Right? Because without that, they wouldn't have been able to... right. So the law is not changed that they can't try to obliterate the Jews. What has changed is that the Jews can put the fear of God in everybody first. Right? And so that's what stops the stops the action. Although, far too many people. There's some nasty stuff in the book. There's far too much killing. There's and it's just too casual for to go with the rest of the story. It should be a light story, but it should be one where you think about things. In fact, in Talmud it says that the two holidays that will never end are Yom Kippur and Purim. So it's interesting. Other holidays may not always be, but these two will. And I think the quality of the real quality of Purim is to look at, as you like to say, look at the masks that you wear, and what are they about, and why do you wear them, and are they valid, and should they be there, or not? Are we helping ourselves? Are we moving ourselves forward as a society by the masks that we wear, or are we in fact playing nasty games? But yeah, to look for any.
But sometimes the masks are not to hurt, the masks are to protect.
Right, sometimes they are. Just in the story, they're a little weird. Right, and here's another great piece out of the Book of Esther. It's in chapter 6. Right, the king can't sleep, and so what does he order to have read? It's the book of records of his accomplishments.
Tell me how great I am.
Narcissist, is he?
Well, but that's what he gets to put himself to sleep. I mean, think about that a minute. Right. That's got to mean your life is not very exciting. Right. There's not a whole lot of accomplishments in it. And of course, that's the beginning of the turnaround. That's the climax, because he reads in it that Mordecai saved his life when somebody had plotted to kill him. Mordecai overhears the plotters plotting, and because Mordecai understands every language in Persia, 127 of them or something. But in any event, he definitely knows the language of the plotters, who think that they're able to plot in secret because they're speaking another language. And he betrays them, and they're caught. And he's never rewarded for it, and that's what the king realizes as the story of his life is being read to him. And he says, "Well, what was done to thank this person for saving my life?" And the reader says, "Nothing. Nothing's recorded." And that's the moment that Haman walks in to ask for permission to hang Mordecai on this gallows. Not good timing, but that's an overarching theme inside the story, is that timing just is everything, and Haman doesn't have good timing. Does not have it at all, right? So he walks in, and the king says to him, "Well, what should be done to the man whom the king desires to honor?" And you want to talk about the narcissist, Haman, right? Haman says, "Well, who could he want to honor besides me?" So he comes up with this elaborate idea of, just throw on the king's clothes and put him on the finest steed and parade him through town and say, "This is what's done for someone whom the king chooses to honor." And the king says, that sounds pretty good. Go do it for Mordecai. Probably not a good time to ask to hang him. And it's the beginning of the unraveling for Haman. And then shortly thereafter, the eunuchs come and take them to the party at Esther's. And then the fun really gets going.
I can imagine.
The king and his vizier and his wife at a drinking party. It's interesting. Haman's married. He's got 10 sons.
All with one wife?
Yeah, all with Zeresh, his wife. And their names are in chapter 9, because that's when they're hung. So, that's in the bloody scenes, and those are not usually don't usually get a whole lot of play. First of all, they come late. Secondly, they don't need to be done a whole lot with. It's one of the challenges. There's parts in everybody's scriptures that I wish were not there. Everybody's got nasty pieces. Everybody's got nasty pieces, and and the other truth is that we all have nasty pieces inside us. And so let's flip and say maybe that's part of the reason for nasty parts in scriptures, so that in looking at them, we look at ourselves and recognize that none of us are angels or saints. All of us have stuff and masks. And we're not always nice, right? There's sometimes we're passive aggressive, sometimes we're outright aggressive, sometimes we're nasty.
Don't be fooled by me.
Yeah, don't be fooled.
For I wear a mask.
And we all do.
1,000 masks.
Mm-hmm. Some of those are worn for against us, so that we not see. Right? Sometimes it's who and what we are that we hide from ourselves.
Yeah, well, those are the most difficult masks to take off.
Yes, because you don't even know they're there. You don't even know they're there. Sometimes if you have a good friend, your good friend will tell you, you need to look at this one. But otherwise you may never see it. And we all have those. We all have those. And that's the humanity of it. None of us are angels. And I think, we're supposed to look at stories like Esther, stories like Jacob, and say, okay, just because I'm far less than perfect, I'm incredibly human. I'm perfectly human, which means that I've got all kinds of garbage in me. It's perfectly human. It's what humans are designed to be and do. And so, how do I work on that? What do I do with that? How do I turn that into something that's going to, in my mind, is going to give the greatest pie to everybody? Right? Not just me, not just others, but to all of us. How do we share in a pie in the world? How do we share this planet among all the people who live here? Because there's enough here. There's plenty here. There's so much in the world. There is not the scarcity that a lot of people would have us believe there is. But there's just not. If we would start to manage it well. In South America, the American Indians, the native populations, licked hunger. There's a lot of evidence to show that nobody went hungry in South America and in Central America. A lot of that was potatoes, which comes from South America. But they were able to conquer hunger. Now, they didn't conquer a lot of other stuff, but they were able to conquer that. And if they could do it with their technology, we certainly can do it today with our technology. And we can do it without being cruel to animals. We can do it with being humane to them and with increasing the plant protein in our diets, which is a whole lot healthier than all of the animal protein that certainly Americans eat in our diet. There is enough. There's enough to go around. There really isn't a scarcity, and people do not need to hoard. But we see it. We certainly see hoarding. I mean, look at what happens if there's a hurricane warning put out. People buy 3 times the amount of water they need and stockpile.
Well, it doesn't stop at just the food. I mean, try to get gas. When they say that you're in that cone, just try to get gas. I mean, and technically, you can drive a little ways after the storm and go fill up.
Yeah.
Because it's usually not like everywhere that gets the power out. You can drive to where their power is still on. But just people will not be without that gas knowing a storm is going to be coming because they don't want to be inconvenienced.
Right.
So it is always to put yourself first.
Yeah. And of course they're afraid of not having enough gas for their generators and all the other stuff. And so the gas gets shoved in containers, some of which I'm sure, rust out and leak into the ground and go into our water supply. Isn't that a cheerful thought?
Yeah, but you should be getting rid of that old gas.
You should be, but I'll bet
use it.
I'll bet a
put
lot
it
of
in your
people-
car. If it's
I'm willing to bet there's cans of gas stored from 2 years ago still in some people's garages and backyards,
sheds and things.
Yeah, the sheds are scary, right? Because then it can really turn into a dramatic event. So we do have these wonderful tendencies. And on the other hand, when we actually do get hit with an emergency, we saw some incredible sharing that went down with Sandy and some of the other disasters that have hit the the U.S. We've had our share, and we'll have more, because nature does its thing periodically, and they're not getting nicer. We're seeing economies.
Yeah,
really
I think we've
dramatically
also
changing.
put ourselves in the path too. I mean, we've really put ourselves. There are more communities and places where there,
Yeah.
this weather has been happening forever.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Springtime tornadoes, they
what-
happen every year.
The one that took Galveston and did so much damage there came across Port St. Lucie, across Okeechobee, and out the other side of Florida, went across the Gulf and pounded Galveston. So, and that was one of the worst hurricanes in history. And the reason it wasn't in the gazillions of billions of dollars is because we hadn't yet built Port St. Lucie.
Right. Right. What's in its path? Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we've put a lot of people in its path. We put a lot of people on shorelines because people like
Of
the
course,
salt life. It's
sure.
wonderful.
Mhm.
Sit there and watch the water come lapping at you, and then all of a sudden it's not lapping. It's chomping.
Even these videos that you see where houses tumble into rivers, well, they weren't put there a long time ago. The old folks knew to back it off. Where the land was. Well, you want that view. You want that beautiful water view.
Yeah.
So now that 100-year flood, your
Yeah.
house just went downstream.
Yeah.
So-
it amazes me how many people don't think anything of building below the 100-year flood. That means it's going to flood eventually. Maybe not. Maybe not this week, and maybe not this year, maybe
Right.
not this decade.
And you may you may never see it, but
You may.
But you could next year, right?
Yeah, you
Mhm.
might. And even in Tucson, they have a 100-year plain because they do get flash flooding, and every time that there's a major rain, somebody gets washed away in it, and all kinds of devastation happens, but in small areas usually. And except one year, supposedly, I wasn't there yet, but a hurricane backed up out of the Gulf into the area and did some real havoc, as they will.
Just dropping water. Yeah.
Yeah, just,
Yeah,
just doing all kinds of
which doesn't happen.
Yeah, the
often.
desert can't handle water. It does not absorb it because the ground is so dry and so packed that the water rushes off because there's too much of it too fast. So there have been and there will be disasters, and we're invited to be our best selves, not just at those times, but at all times. And if we put our minds to it, we can solve amazing problems. We've done it. We're working to solve problems, and I think we'll solve many more than we think we will. And so the key is to not panic. So this is an invitation. Come and join us. Come to dress up Shabbat on the 22nd. We'll be celebrating Purim along with Shabbat as well. There will be Hamantaschen there also. That one's an easy one to come and join us.
I can never look at another Hamantaschen again.
I think you will, especially if it's chocolate. And then please join us for our Art and Craft Festival on April 14th. That's from 10 to 4 at the PSL Community Center. And we'll have lots of exciting things there. Please check it out. I was told that the flyer is not up on the website yet, but it will be there before the weekend's out. And you also can download a vendor application, and we'd love to have you as part of it. Come and see it. It's free admission. Please come and see what local artists and local crafters have to offer. And there'll be some other exciting parts with it, too. So that's worth coming to. Again, it's free to the public. It's at the Port St. Lucie Community Center, April 14th, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Please join us, and I think it'll be a good time for everybody. We've had a number of vendors who've have applied already, and I anticipate we'll have a whole lot more. So it should be a fun time for all. And it's a good facility. There's parking right on the premises, and parking, of course, across the street in the city parking lot that's there. So lots of easy ways to come and visit it and have a good time. Those are all good things. And then the week after that, It's Passover. So if you were looking for a place to come to first or second night Seder, we will be hosting both of those. Again, information will be up on the website very shortly on that. That's a full ritual meal. It's about an hour, and then we have a delicious holiday meal. And you'll learn about Passover and have some fun with our community. We always have fun at our Seders. They're a great time. Those are just some of the things coming up. And there's an Intro to Judaism class coming also. Lots of exciting things happening at Congregation Eitz Chayim. So keep an eye out what we're doing. And in the fall, we have, of course, the high holidays. And before that, we have the expo, our second annual expo. That way it's valid. So some of the exciting things coming up. And you'll have to keep checking it out.
During Passover,
Yes.
when you're discussing from the Haggadah,
Uh-huh.
Moses parting the Red Sea and pointing the staff, do you think maybe I should stand on top of the waterfall there and with a big
I would love
stick?
to see you standing on your waterfall.
I don't think my pool will part though.
Probably. Well, you never know. You know, there's a cute cartoon of two things. One is in a race. They're having a race at an Olympic pool, and Moses has the track empty on one of them, and the other one is they're fishing, and Moses parts the sea and makes it difficult for others to fish. Yeah, we always have fun with all kinds of things. But you know, Moses is actually not mentioned in the Haggadah. Of all crazy things. As important as he was for the Exodus, he's not mentioned. But that's for another day's show. And hopefully then you'll give me a call at 772-340-1590 and ask some questions. I love talking with Stuart. And
You can do that anytime.
I understand. But, you know, it's fun. And it's also fun when you call in. And we'd love to hear from you. So please join us next week. There's not enough time left this week for anybody to call in. But we'll be looking for calls next week. And let me know what topic maybe you'd like to hear about. Certainly open to doing that. You can send me an email at rabbi@eitzchayim.org, EITZCHAYIM.org. Again, that's Rabbi, RABBI, at EITZCHAYIM.org. And the temple, I didn't give the address for the temple. The temple is at 540 Northwest University Boulevard, Suite 102. It's the middle of the front office, the blue office buildings, right across from Met Stadium from First Data Field. And we're right next to the elevator on the first floor. So come join us sometime. This is Rabbi Shafir Lobb. It's been Ask a Rabbi.